Like every girl, I thought I was lucky. Life felt like a fairy tale, and when Sunil came into it, I became Princess Jasmine, and he was my Aladdin. He made my world revolve around him. But the truth? Fairy tales end, and mine turned into a nightmare I never saw coming. We'd been together for 4 years. My mornings always began with his text. Morning, babe, red heart. It was simple, sweet, his ritual. And eventually it became mine too. Even when he was groggy, even when work called early, I'd wake up to it. Then one day, nothing. No message. No call. Just silence. I stared at my screen longer than I should have. Kept checking throughout the morning. I even restarted my phone twice, convincing myself something had glitched. Yes, we lived in different cities, not too far, but far enough that we counted days till the weekend. That was our time. Our little world. So I told myself, he must be busy. Maybe he overslept. Maybe he dropped his phone. Funny how he didn't need to make excuses because I had already made them. All for him. That's what love does. It turns red flags into temporary storms. It turns betrayal into misunderstandings. It turns the ones hurting you into the ones you protect. But little things, small silences, skipped habits, they're always the beginning of big changes. I knew every scent he wore. Earthy, subtle, comforting. Because I picked them. Sunil used to wait for me to go shopping. He'd nudge me with playful eyes and say, "Help me pick a shirt. You always know what I look best in." When he needed new perfume, he'd call and say, "I want to smell like your memory." And I used to smile, trace the bottle with my fingers, and choose the one that reminded me of warm skin and quiet Sundays. Once I teased, "Why do I have to choose everything for you?" He wrapped his arms around my waist, kissed my temple, and whispered, "I want to be your favorite sight, your favorite scent. So, when I'm not around, you miss me more than you want to admit." But then one night, months later, he showed up smelling different. Sharp, musky, loud, like something that didn't belong in our story. When I hugged him, it clung to him like a stranger's skin. And I pulled away faster than I meant to. "You smell different," I said, forcing a light tone. He chuckled, ran a hand through his hair casually. Too casually. "Oh," my colleague gave me a sample. "You like it?" I wanted to look into his eyes, search for something familiar. But he wasn't looking at me, his gaze drifted behind me as if I'd already faded into the background. He didn't notice the pause in my breath. He didn't ask why my arms felt colder. It was the first time in 4 years he didn't understand what I was really asking. And I didn't have the strength to say what I truly wanted to know. Who is she? So I nodded, because it was easier than asking, "Why are you wearing something new tonight?" But not for me. We used to share playlists like secrets. He knew I cried to soft acoustic tracks and read poetry to piano music. I knew he had a soft spot for cheesy 90s boy bands, though he'd deny it every time. Once, he made me a playlist titled, "For Rainy Nights with You." Each song felt like a whispered promise in the dark, slow ballads, soft strings, warm vocals. I remember pressing play during monsoons, curling under the blanket with his hoodie and feeling like he was right there. But a few months ago, I borrowed his phone on a drive to pick music. Spotify was open. Recently played? Her Smile in My Hoodie. I stared at it. A title he never used for me. A phrase that felt specific. Intimate. I didn't ask. I didn't say a word. Just scrolled past it and picked another playlist. But my hand trembled slightly on the gear stick. And something inside me cracked, not shattered, not ruined, just weakened. The kind of crack that doesn't scream. Just quietly waits for another hit. It was a Saturday. We were curled up on his couch, popcorn between us, a movie we'd watched a dozen times playing in the background. But the silence was louder than the soundtrack. His phone buzzed. He picked it up, and there it was. The smile. The kind that reached his eyes. That curved his lips into warmth and made time slow. A smile I hadn't seen in weeks. "Who was that?" I asked, nudging his knee with a grin I practice too often now. He blinked. Almost startled. "Oh, no one. Just memes." He locked his phone before I could see the screen. slid it under a cushion like it was nothing. But the smile didn't fade. He kept grinning, his dimples. Once mine, shining for someone else now. And it hit me. He didn't laugh at my jokes like that anymore. He didn't look up when I laughed either. We used to be in sync. Now, even our silences sat in separate corners of the room. One night, I stood in front of the mirror, wearing the red dress he once said made me look dangerously beautiful. It was the night of his best friend's wedding. I remembered how his hand slid down my back when we entered the banquet hall, how he leaned in and whispered, "I want this night to last forever." He meant it then. I saw it in his eyes. But forever ended quietly. I wore the dress again that night. Dinner plans. Just us. I straightened my hair the way he liked. Wore the lipstick he once said reminded him of rose petals. He didn't even glance. Not a blink. Not a smile. Nothing. Instead, he talked about his boss's new intern, about how she was too confident for her age. I stirred my pasta slowly. And that was the first time I felt it, not just sadness. Not just worry. But fear blooming in my chest. Not fear of losing him, but fear that I already had. It was her birthday. Yes, her. The intern. I wasn't supposed to notice. But I did. I saw the event marked on his Google Calendar during a Zoom call. He was screen sharing, explaining something to a colleague. And there it was, Anaya's birthday cake bouquet, pinned at the top of the day like it mattered more than anything else. My heart skipped a beat. Later that evening, I asked casually while we were brushing our teeth, "Did you wish Anaya?" He looked startled, too startled. Yeah, the office group did," he mumbled, his tone dismissive. I smiled and nodded, pretending to believe him. But I had already seen the email confirmation the day before, a custom perfume order. 3 hours spent choosing her gift. He remembered her favorite scent. Mine? He once forgot until Facebook reminded him. One night, we played a silly couples quiz on my phone. It was one of those harmless apps. Test how well you know each other. We giggled through the first few rounds, teasing, laughing, arguing over who was Messier. Then came the question. Be honest. What's one thing you've hidden from your partner? I laughed and nudged him. Oh, I once broke your headphones and blamed the cat. He chuckled. Wait, that was you? We both laughed. But then he paused. His thumb hovered over his screen. His jaw tightened. I watched as his expression shifted, from amused to conflicted. Finally, he typed. Sometimes, I talk to someone else when we fight. The laughter died in my throat. I looked at him, waiting. Who? I asked softly. He shrugged, brushing imaginary lint from his jeans. Just someone I vent to. It's not serious. But I knew. You don't grin at your phone in the middle of a fight unless the person on the other end makes your world softer than the one you're in. You don't just vent to someone who makes your anger disappear in a heartbeat. You turn to them because turning to me started to feel like a burden. Some betrayals aren't loud. They tiptoe. They creep into the quiet spaces, between conversations. I noticed things not enough to accuse him, just enough to unsettle me. He began locking his phone. He had never done that before. I had a work email leak scare, he said, waving it off with a nonchalant smile. But then he began tilting his screen away when typing. He used earbuds instead of the speaker when I was around. He'd quickly close browser tabs the second I walked into the room, like he was hiding shadows behind pixels. Once, I asked to borrow his charger. He gave it to me but kept the phone attached. Another time, I saw 2 takeaway coffee cups in his car. He said he'd met a friend. Who? I asked. Just someone from the gym, he replied quickly. I nodded. But it was getting harder and harder to believe a man who kept building 2 separate realities, one where I existed, and one where I was merely an echo. He still said, I love you. But it sounded hollow, like punctuation. Something to end a sentence, not begin a feeling. And when I dared to question, to ask, to voice the growing knot in my chest, he'd place a hand gently on my arm and say, Why are you being paranoid? That's how people hide the truth best. Not by lying, but by making you doubt your own clarity. I met her once. Anaya. It was at his office Diwali party. She was younger than me, confident,
Polished.
she walked like every room belonged to her. She wore a red silk sari that shimmered under the lights, and her laugh rang out louder than the music. When he introduced me, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Nice to meet you," she said, as if it wasn't. I brushed it off, smiled politely, tucked my discomfort behind my lipstick and bangles, until the whispers began. Not harsh, not cruel, just casual. A friend from 2 floors down messaged me one afternoon. "Hey, just curious. Anaya and your guy seem super tight lately. Is everything okay?" Another, over wine and dim lighting, said. "Honestly, they joke around a lot. Sometimes a little too much. But hey, maybe it's just office banter." It was always framed as harmless, playful, but doubt, when it grows in silence, becomes deafening. So I asked him, just once, "Is there something between you and Anaya?" He looked almost offended.
Wow.
"Seriously? She's a kid. I'm mentoring her. You should trust me more." But trust wasn't the issue. Distance was. Not the kind you measure in miles, but in moments. Moments when I'd talk, and he'd scroll. Moments when my presence felt like background noise. And every time he spoke about her, his voice lit up, the way it once used to for me. One afternoon, I went to his place early, unannounced. We were supposed to go for dinner that evening, and I thought I'd surprise him with his favorite chocolates and that silly comic book he always reread when he was stressed. The door was unlocked. Inside, the house smelled faintly of vanilla and jasmine, sweet, feminine, unfamiliar. There, on the couch, was a pink floral scarf. Definitely not mine. On the coffee table, a mug with lipstick marks around the rim. Not mine either. Time stopped. The gift bag in my hand slipped to the floor. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the scene, wondering, how can betrayal be born from silence? How could something this loud be wrapped in such a gentle quiet? The front door creaked open minutes later. He entered. His eyes widened when he saw me. He froze. We stood there. No words, just heavy silence and truth thick in the air. Finally, he said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "You weren't supposed to see that." And that was it.
No denial.
No lies. Just the quiet confession of a man who had moved on without ever saying goodbye. Suddenly, every little thing made sense. The compliments that stopped. The perfume he didn't notice. The laugh that wasn't mine. The playlist meant for someone else. He tried to explain. His voice cracked as he said, "It wasn't technically cheating. They just connected. He didn't mean to hurt me," he said. But betrayal doesn't care for technicalities. It doesn't need sex or hotel rooms or lipstick stains. Sometimes it's just the slow replacement of someone you once couldn't imagine living without.
Piece by piece.
Emotion by emotion.
Until
you start forgetting to turn to them. Until you start celebrating your wins with someone else.
Until
they stop being your first call when your world falls apart. He didn't cheat with his body. He cheated with his heart. And the most painful part? He gave her every little piece of him. I used to call mine. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a vase against the wall or drown in ice cream. I didn't post sad quotes on Instagram or burn his hoodies on the balcony. I just packed my bag, left a single note on the kitchen counter. It wasn't just her. It was every small lie you told me with your silence. I hope she notices all the little things I used to. But it didn't happen all at once. Leaving someone you once built your whole world around isn't a clean break. It's a slow unraveling, a daily ache. I tried to stay, tried to rewind our memories like lullabies to help me sleep, held on to hope like a woman clinging to driftwood in a shipwreck. But the truth doesn't care about how much you love someone. It seeps through every crack, and it stays. There was a night I stood under the shower for an hour, scrubbing myself raw, trying to rinse off the feeling of being unwanted. Another night, I typed out a message that bled everything I felt: anger, sorrow, betrayal. Then I deleted it. Because what was the point? The words wouldn't reach him. Not the way they used to. One morning, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were hollow. Her smile, practiced. That's when I knew I was fighting for someone who had already let go. So I left, quietly. I didn't wait for one last fight or dramatic closure. I rented a storage locker, packed my things piece by piece, folded away memories like fragile paper, trying not to rip. I found a small apartment across town. It had peeling paint and creaky floors, but it was mine. I called my best friend, told her everything. And on my final night in that house, I didn't cry. I looked at the red dress draped over the chair, the one he once called dangerously beautiful. He walked past it like it didn't exist. And I walked out. People say time heals everything, but they never talk about the days in between. The empty bed, the silence that roars, louder than a scream, the memories that claw back when a song plays or an old email pops up. The worst were the dreams, because in my dreams, he was still mine. And every morning, I had to lose him all over again. But healing did come, not with fireworks or applause. It came like autumn,
Soft.
quiet.
Certain.
It came in little rebellions, choosing not to text, choosing to block, choosing to breathe, without waiting for his name on my screen. Long walks turned into therapy. I began lighting candles, not for ambience, not for him but for me. Now, when my phone buzzes, it's just a friend. No panic, no hidden hope, just peace. And that's the loudest love I've ever known. I no longer crave confessions. I no longer chase closure. All I want now is someone who sees me, really sees me, without having to be reminded of my worth. My mornings no longer begin with his good morning texts, but I still wake up, smiling, because I no longer settle for lies wrapped in affection. It wasn't the affair that broke me. It was the slow, silent shift of attention, the way love slipped through the cracks, through little things he thought I'd never notice. But I did. And someday, he will too. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mended Souls, where broken souls shine beyond their scars. And tell us in the comments, what part hit you the hardest? Your story matters too.